The Wit of a Duck by John Burroughs. Recorded for LibriVox Coffee Break Collection, Volume 3. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. The homing instinct in birds and animals is one of their most remarkable traits. Their strong local attachments and their skill in finding their way back when removed to a distance. It seems at times as if they possess some extra sense, the home sense, which operates unerringly. I saw this illustrated one spring in the case of a mallard drake. My son had 2 ducks, and to mate with them he procured a drake of a neighbor who lived 2 miles south of us. He brought the drake home in a bag. The bird had no opportunity to see the road along which it was carried, or to get the general direction, except at the time of starting, when the boy carried him a few rods openly. He was placed with the ducks in a spring run, under a tree in a secluded place on the river slope, about 100 yards from the highway. The 2 ducks treated him very contemptuously. It was easy to see that the drake was homesick from the first hour, and soon he left the presence of the scornful ducks. Then we shut the 3 in a barn together, and kept them there a day and a night. Still the friendship did not ripen. The ducks and the drake separated the moment we let them out. Left to himself, the drake at once turned his head homeward, and started up the hill for the highway. Then we shut the trio together again for a couple of days, but with the same results as before. There seemed to be but one thought in the mind of the drake, and that was home. Several times we headed off and brought him back, till finally, on the 3rd or 4th day, I said to my son, "If that drake is really bound to go home, we shall have an opportunity to make a trial, and I will go with him to see that he has fair play." We withdrew, and the homesick mallard started up through the currant patch, then through the vineyard towards the highway, which he had never seen. When we reached the fence, he followed it south till he came to the open gate, where he took the road as confidently as if he knew for certain that it would lead him straight to his mate. How eagerly he paddled along, glancing right and left, and increasing his speed at every step. I kept about 50 yards behind him. Presently he met a dog. He paused and eyed the animal for a moment, and then turned to the right along a road which diverged just at that point, and which led to the railroad station. I followed, thinking the drake would soon lose his bearings, and get hopelessly confused in the tangle of roads that converged at the station. But he seemed to have an exact map of the country in his mind. He soon left the station road, went around a house, through a vineyard, till he struck a stone fence that crossed the road at right angles. This he followed eastward till it was joined by a barbed wire fence, under which he passed, and again entered the highway he had first taken. Then down the road he paddled, with renewed confidence, under the trees, down a hill, through a grove, over a bridge, up the hill again towards home. Presently he found his clue cut in 2 by the railroad track. This was something he had never before seen. He paused, glanced up it, then down it, then at the highway across it, and quickly concluded this last was his course. On he went, faster and faster. He had now gone half the distance, and was getting tired. A little pool of water by the roadside caught his eye. Into it he plunged, bathed, drank, preened his plumage for a few moments, and then started homeward again. He knew his home was on the upper side of the highway, for he kept his eye bent in that direction, scanning the fields. Twice he stopped, stretched himself up, and scanned the landscape intently. Then on again. It seemed as if an invisible cord was attached to him, and he was being pulled down the road. just opposite a farm lane which led up to a group of farm buildings, and which did indeed look like his home lane. He paused and seemed to be debating with himself. Two women just then came along. They lifted and flirted their skirts, for it was raining, and this disturbed him again, and decided him to take to the farm lane. Up the lane he went, rather doubtingly, I thought. In a few moments it brought him to a barnyard, where a group of hens caught his eye. Evidently he was on good terms with these hens at home, for he made up to these eagerly, as if to tell them his troubles. But the hens knew no ducks, then withdrew suspiciously, then assumed a threatening attitude, till one old Dominic put up her feathers and charged upon him viciously. Again he tried to make up to them, quacking softly, and again he was repulsed. Then the cattle in the yard spied this stranger and came sniffing towards it, full of curiosity. The drake quickly concluded he had got into the wrong place, and turned his face southward again. Through the fence he went into a plowed field. Presently another stone fence crossed his path. Along this he again turned towards the highway. In a few minutes he found himself in a corner, formed by the meeting of two stone fences. Then he turned appealingly to me, uttering the soft note of the mallard. To use his wings never seemed to cross his mind. Well, I am bound to confess that I helped the drake over the wall, but I sat him down in the road as impartially as I could. How well his pink feet knew the course! How they flew up the road! His green head and white throat fairly twinkled under the long avenue of oaks and chestnuts. At last we came in sight of the home lane, which led up to the farmhouse 100 or more yards from the road. I was curious to see if he would recognize the place. At the gate leading to the lane he paused. He had just gone up a lane that looked like that, and had been disappointed. What should he do now? Truth compels me to say that he overshot his mark. He kept on hesitating along the highway. It was now nearly night. I felt sure the duck would soon discover his mistake, but I had not time to watch the experiment further. I went around the drake and turned him back. As he neared the lane this time, he seemed suddenly to see some familiar landmark, and he rushed up it at the top of his speed. His joy and eagerness were almost pathetic. I followed close. Into the house yard he rushed with uplifted wings, and fell down almost exhausted by the side of his mate. A half-hour later the two of them were nipping the grass together in the pasture, and he, I have no doubt, was eagerly telling her the story of his adventures. End of The Wit of a Duck. Recording by Alan Davis Drake on the New Jersey Shore.